when you see ambulance services, you never ever know, or we weren't taught in school most of the time, that the first ambulance service was called the Freedom House Ambulance Service. And it was actually 25 black men in the state of Pittsburgh who founded this organization and who worked to really meet the needs of their community. You see, in the 1960s, well, you can imagine it was a lot of civil unrest and a lot of racism, and black people were not getting the medical care that they needed. The crisis was basically there was no ambulance service. So even when, you'd rushed there, you have to have your own car. Your grandmother could run, your father, your mother, if you had an emergency. But this system that we see today of ambulance service came out of this Freedom House ambulance service. I thought it was so interesting to share. So I want to thank everybody for joining me. Hi, Roilers. Thank you all for joining me. And if this is your first time, welcome. Would you consider joining the family? Hit that like, share, and subscribe button. It helps us. Now, we talk about the Royal Black and Elite here and culture and all types of subjects. So I thank everybody for joining me. Now, let's get into our discussion. We want to start with Peter and the Safar because he was very instrumental in training these 25 black men who would go on to work for the Freedom House enterprises, and then of course the ambulance service. So again, as I was saying, you really couldn't get the medical care that you needed during the early 1960s. And so he identified these people, these 25 young men, to go into the community to train them in order for them to get the immediate medical care they needed there in Pittsburgh. Now, who was Dr. Safar? He was really a genius. He created the CPR. And so, he did a lot of work, and he helped them through funding through the federal government and from the city to launch the Freedom House Enterprises, where the ambulance service came about. And this was in 1967, and it was a job training program. Isn't that amazing? I think that is just so amazing. But they didn't just drive the car. I mean, drive it was kind of like a van. It looked like a little white van. It wasn't anything spectacular they were driving around in, but it met the need. It had enough room to put a gurney back there. And they were trained on advanced CPR, cardiac care, airway management, defibrillation, trauma stabilization. So they weren't just playing. They really knew what they were doing. Now, Dr. Safar trained them, and a lady named Dr. Nancy Carolyn trained them, and they did numerous hours learning how to do it. Now, the result actually was extraordinary because survival rates improved immediately, response times were faster, patients arrived at hospitals stabilized rather than deteriorating. Hospitals began to trust them, doctors began to trust them, so they really did well. So they weren't just glorified ambulance drivers, they were actually back there doing the work. Now, because of this model, this was our first generation of paramedics in American history. Again, it was 25 of them. And they took that model from the Freedom House program, and it became a national prototype all over the country. Their work directly influenced what would later become the standard EMS system here in America. This model trained a lot of paramedics, and they would deliver special care, advanced care before the people would arrive. So before, when ambulance came to pick you up, it was really just to take you there. You were cargo. It was not that they were going to try to save you or do anything, but because of Dr. Safar teaching and because of the CPR and them learning all those skills, you could arrive almost okay. So that is what's so beautiful about it. So when you see an ambulance riding down the street, think about these 25 gentlemen who started it. They learned what they needed to learn. They did what they needed to, and it came right out of Pittsburgh, the Hill District. 25 black men. Now, how did it disperse? Well, what happened in the mid 1970s, the city decided to consolidate ambulance services under the new municipal system. So in 1975, the Freedom House ambulance service was shut down. Now, many of those paramedics, they went on and they were absorbed into that new city EMS system, but that standalone organization, it was no longer, it dissolved. So I wanted to give them their flowers. And it's near and dear to my heart because my son started his career as a paramedic. Now he's moved on to be a fireman. He's been there many years and he's a shot caller. So have you ever considered, or do you know anyone who's a fireman or a paramedic? Put it down below. Put some hearts and love. Let's show our appreciation for them. But I wanted to say that is a great career for people to consider. It pays well. It has great retirement. And so, I think that's a great career that you should talk to your son or daughter, any of them about. He's had a wonderful career because of it. And because of these gentlemen, we can now talk about it today. And though their names are not often mentioned, I want to mention some of the more prominent ones. One name is John Moon. Another one is Mitchell Brown. Another is James McCoy. Another one is John Metz. And the other one is William Beal Brown. Now, if you want a full list of all 25 names, they're at the University of Pittsburgh Archives and at the Hayes History Center in Pittsburgh and at the Smithsonian exhibit of the original EMS. They were in existence from 1967 to 1975. So I want to thank you all for joining me. I hope that you enjoyed another great episode of Royal, Black, and Elite. Now, as you know, my lectures are for educational and entertainment purposes only, and the Fair Act use is in effect. Now, you all continue to learn, like, share, and subscribe, and push this through the algorithm. Let the world know that every time they see an ambulance, it was because 25 black men in Pittsburgh were trained and their system was duplicated all over the country. So I want to thank you all for joining me. Have a great day. Now keep learning. I put some other medical ones. I think you all will love that. At least YouTube think you'll like this video that's coming up next. Have a great day. And thank you all for joining me for another great episode of Royal, Black, and Elite.